Good morning. It's a beautiful morning here today. So I'm sat up on a little patio thing that we've created, and I could actually be in the sun at the moment because it's only about 9 o'clock, and so it's just really nice. I thought I'd video up here today, and I've got a cup of chicory actually. Started drinking chicory with cream, and it's really good. So I've got a drink, and today I want to talk about the first year when we lived here. The reason I'm doing that with these videos and telling you about our journey here and how we managed is because if any of you are thinking of changing your life or doing something similar, or maybe you're just interested in hearing how we managed, but I think it's thinking that if people really want to try and do this and live in a different way, then I'm giving an honest view of how it was. It's a very condensed view, but just trying to give you some idea. In those first 2 weeks, we were getting our water established and some kind of toilet facilities and just generally clearing the house out. And we worked hard like that really up until that first Christmas. So it's back in 2012. And then we went back to the UK for a couple of weeks and then came back in January. And that winter just happened to be a really cold winter here. And we were living in the camper van. We got a bale of straw to insulate underneath the camper van, so we put all this straw underneath. A local farmer, we went and called to see somebody and see if we could buy some straw. That sounds very simple, but we had hardly any French language. So every time we needed to make contact with a French person to do something, it was a big deal. And it was always a case of like really getting our confidence up to go and do it. So that involved going to he ran this guest house, still does, in the village, a really nice man, and having to knock on the door, go in with hardly any French, had a bit of writing saying what we wanted. Even the French writing was probably not correct. But they were so kind, and that's what we noticed in the first year. People here were so kind to us and so helpful, very quiet, quite reserved, but if ever we did need something and asked for something or for some help or advice, they were really good and very patient and encouraging with us in speaking French. So that was a real plus. The first year what we were doing was just continuing with it, just trying to make our house into a home that we could live in. We really wanted to get out of the camper van, although we were fine in there, and there was lots of enjoyable things about living in the camper van. In many ways it was quite easy, but obviously our aim was to live in the house, and so all our focus was on that. We didn't know many people, so we were very much on our own. And because it was winter, our closest neighbours, Norbert and Odile, who were the people we bought the house from and who were just the most gorgeous couple, in their late 70s at that time, and they were so lovely to us and helpful without being too present and interfering. They were just really nice presents to have around. But every winter they went back to their other house, so they only used to live here during the summer months, and so they disappeared in November. And so when we came back, we had no neighbours close at all. We felt at times very on our own and quite isolated, and it was fine between the two of us, but there was that feeling of like we'd left so many really good friends and family and everything we knew, and it really was that feeling of starting a new life and starting again. It was hard work, it was a lot of hard work, but we were full of enthusiasm, and we never felt, now I can't put to be honest here, I was going to say we never felt overwhelmed. I think there were occasional days when I felt overwhelmed. Probably Tom didn't, or he didn't say. But I always say there were 5 days during that time when I just thought they were really bad days. And one of those was the day when it was so cold, it was snowing outside, beautiful. And our gas, well, first of all, we got up in the morning, freezing. We have no heating in the camper van. It's a very old camper van, so our heating was just to put the gas stove on a bit and use that. Went to open the door was frozen up, so we couldn't even get out of the camper van. Went to switch on the gas wasn't working at all. We'd got the wrong kind of gas for cool temperatures, so we had no gas, and no water. So everything had frozen there, and at that moment, I know we weren't in the Arctic or anything, but that was an interesting moment for me. Interesting is probably the best way to put it. I was like, oh my God, what are we doing? We're incapable. How can we be in this situation? We're here, two people, like late 40s, and we've got ourselves into a situation where we don't have any water, heating, and we can't even get out of our camper van. Anyway, that was my first thought, was like, shit. And then obviously we coped with that situation, and I've probably got a picture I'll maybe show you. I'll try and put it on here of Tom melting snow. We managed, and obviously you have to manage, and so eventually, yes, we got out the camper van. Thank goodness for the sunshine as well. The sun comes up. Things always feel better when the sun is shining, and especially when you're reliant on solar power. It really connects you with the sun. We went and we bought the right kind of gas. We bought 2 gas canisters so that we always had a spare one, because at that time we had no spare if one ran out. We'd been using butane, and so what we needed was propane. So we use propane or propane now. Yeah, but that feeling was like, oh dear, this is difficult. And the neighbours weren't there, and we didn't know anybody else at that time. The people we knew the best was Anne-Marie, who worked in the library up in the town. And I used to go to the library to use the internet in the early days. So if I needed to send any emails, we would go up to the library. And so we got to know Anne-Marie, who was Dutch, so she could also speak English. And really, when I think about it, that was one of our best connections. And it was probably the first connection we made with somebody else other than our close neighbours. And her and her husband run the ecological campsite, which is just down the road from us, not too far away. And one day we were in our camper van, and I looked out and I said to Tom, I said, there's some people on horses there, and it just seemed so bizarre to look out and see these 2 people on horseback on these big horses. And I thought, oh my gosh, who's this? Anyway, they were sort of looking a bit lost. Anyway, went out and said bonjour, and it turned out to be Anne-Marie's husband and her daughter. So she'd mentioned that we were living here, and they'd come to introduce themselves and say hello. So they actually joined us for a cup of tea, sat on some little wood stumps, tree stumps, because we didn't have enough chairs. Well, we offered them the chairs, I should say that. We did offer them our 2 chairs, but they seemed happy to sit. They wanted to sit on these little tree stumps, and we had a cup of tea. You realise how much friendship and stuff means when you suddenly don't have any of it. But of course we were lucky enough to have each other. So that was one of the low points, was the cold that winter, and we were going to bed just layered up, just totally wrapped up in clothes with hats on and everything. In fact, I think for a few days we probably didn't really take anything off. So it was extremely cold for us. And then the other downside, I think, was ants. We had a constant problem with ants getting into the camper van. And so we were always having to get rid of ants, which, if you've ever experienced them, it's very difficult to get rid of them. The cold, ants and missing family were the difficult things. That and the physical labour. We were working really lots of physical work. We were digging out the floor and the ground floor of the kitchen, because it was just an earth floor. We were doing that. We were putting in drains, building a dry stone little retaining wall, knocking things down. We were just working really hard, and we did a lot of one of my jobs was to do the lime rendering. So I was like putting lime render on all of the inside of the house, mixing that. We'd both mix it, and then I'd be applying it and dealing with working in weather conditions that we weren't really used to. And I think, yeah, it was a positive time, though. I have to say, it was a positive time, and we look back on it. Maybe you can tell now, even how I'm talking about it, with some fondness. It was that bit of feeling of me and Tom against the world feeling, and we were succeeding and we were doing stuff. We were in contact with our families back home. I was missing my children for sure, but yes, we were happy in what we were doing, and we never felt like we couldn't achieve it. It's a small house, and it felt achievable. So what we had to do was everything, really. There was a good roof on it, but we had to do everything else. So we had to put some sort of electricity in, which we did a 12-volt solar system. Tom did that. It's amazing. So lucky that he understands, his background is electrical engineering. But a lot of other things we had to learn, and even that, he's learning how to do it. He'd never done that to wire a house or anything. So there was electricity, there was a plumbing, had to put some kind of plumbing system in. We decided to keep it very simple, and so we just had water on the ground floor, which was a good thing because we had so many problems with connections and obviously, again, learning to do these things. So it was a case of putting in a toilet and a couple of sinks downstairs, some sort of boiler to heat things. We had what we did, we took the boiler out of the camper van. We had the little one that you get in camper vans. And so we moved that from the camper van and used that for quite a long time. We were taking windows and doors and wood, anything that could be used in the barn, I mean, that could be put into the house. So we were doing loads of recycling, massive recycling, because we didn't have much money. So to buy any wood was really expensive. We were shopping for things. We had some things we had to buy, things like nails and sand. We totally underestimated on the amount of sand and lime that we would use, and that was quite a big expenditure. We used a lot more of that than we imagined. But by the end of that time, we had a house we could move into. I'm not sure everyone would have moved into it, but to us it was good enough to move into. Our sister was visiting with my nephew, and so I knew they were coming in the summer for a week. So really, we moved in just before they arrived. So they had the camper van and we moved into the house in rather a basic state. But in that time, we managed to get floors done. We put a new floor in at the top. It was all insulated and wooden panelled. We'd made several new windows and openings and put windows in. It was all completely lime rendered inside and painted, and we put 2 layers of lime on. I think often it's recommended 4, it depends how smooth you want it to be, but after the second one I decided rough was good. So we had a house that we could actually move into and live in at that point. We didn't have a flushing toilet, but that was okay. So we were still either using a bucket or going out to our compost toilet, so that worked for us. And we also connected the stove and this huge stovepipe and created the upper floor, because we weren't sure that an upper floor would even fit under the roof. So we had obviously the ground floor where we created the kitchen, made a shower, put a shower in as well. And that was like kitchen dining. And then the middle floor was our living room, but at first it was our bedroom because we hadn't finished off the top. And then we had to put in the top floor, and there was plenty of room, so our bedroom is now up there. The upsides were our lovely neighbours next door who just supported us. Occasionally I'd be having a little bit of a down moment, and then Odile would just sort of almost miraculously appear with some jam or a bit of cake or something she'd made. It's almost like she picked up on the times when I just needed a little bit of something to say, you're okay here. There's nice people around you. It's a fine place to be. So that was definitely an upside. And also, one or two friends of Norbert and Odile would come and visit them, and then invariably they'd come and look round the house, which was something we kind of dreaded because, again, it was like an influx of French people speaking French. So that was quite challenging. And also because they were looking around our building works, which was like quite shambolic, really, and would often make comments about, that's that bit of wood too near the stove, that's dangerous. And so it was all like, fear and stuff. But they were also encouraging as well. And the upside as well is they kept giving us things. We got given 16 chairs, like little dining chairs, over the course of that time from various people. They'd arrive and say, do you want these chairs? Well, yeah, we didn't have any dining chairs, but so we started with 4, which was great, and then we got more and more, and we've actually used them for all sorts of things. We've made them into benches in the garden and things like that. So yeah, people were very generous as well. That was nice. And another upside was just being here in nature. We were surrounded by so many insects we'd never seen before, and amazing butterflies. Especially when we first arrived, there were so many butterflies, so many varieties, and we would just sit outside the camper van and all this wildlife was around us, and hearing crickets and seeing lizards. We've got loads of lizards that sort of live in the walls of the house and round about, and yeah, really nice. So the wildlife was a real uptick. And then as we came out of winter, the weather was as well, although once it got towards summer we were working in heat and we weren't used to that. But yeah, it was good. So there was pluses and minuses, as there always are. But it was a good experience for us. Very nice though when we actually moved into the house. We had one meal before we were quite ready, before the house was finished, and Tom and I had sort of put a dining table in there because we brought the dining table with us. That was one of the things we brought, this little dining table on top of the camper van. So we set that up one day. We've got the downstairs was more or less a room. And we were sitting there having our first meal in the house. Some bats came down from upstairs because we'd had bats at the very top of the house, and they came down and flew out. We'd left the door open just a crack, and these bats landed on the top of the door and sort of shimmied along and then went out. It was just amazing, just having this meal and these bats flying past. But yeah, we had some good times. Okay, so yeah, that's just giving you a bit of a flavour of it. If you like these videos, then there's another couple here. Hit the subscribe button, ring the bell if you want to be notified when I make new ones. At the moment, I'm making 2 a week. Yeah, enjoy and have a good week. Bye.